Okay, Boker Tov. Okay, we're gonna start. Boker Tov, everyone. Anyone need anything they don't have yet? Okay. I see we have a whole bunch more on Zoom. Boker Tov, they can hear me? You can hear me on Zoom? Yeah, give me a thumbs up. Excellent. Thank you. If on Zoom, I'm gonna share my, we don't have a screen here. Tammy, okay, we'll see. Let me just text her really quick. I'll just text her real quick, it's okay. No, it's okay, I'm gonna start without the screen on screen. It's not urgent if you have a source sheet, but it's much nicer because I've done so, you know me, I made it all artistic and everything. Okay, hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to the new academic year of Matana Sharon. This is very exciting to be beginning. We just had Parshat Breshit, such a week of new beginnings. This is also a little bittersweet. In a little bit, I'm going to say a few words. We've lost a dear student, and just coming in here today, it's very emotional for me not to see her in the class. She was just with us during Elul, Bepi Barth, Seichona Lebracha, and so our learning today is dedicated to her memory, Bela Malka Bat Abraham Be'edel. And I'm going to say a few words toward the end about Bepi, but I just had to begin with that. And I know some of you are really dear friends of hers, and very sorry for our loss. Okay. This course is Mindfulness and Meaning in Talmudic Teachings. They are not going to be meditating. Sorry, Susie. Actually, maybe we will. We'll see how people feel about it. But we are going to be thinking about mindfulness and about increasing our mindfulness and finding meaning in the Gemara and Talmud. If you have no experience with Talmud, if you have experience with Talmud, don't worry, it's all good. As you know, I always make it as accessible as possible to everyone. And the thought is on a higher level. So whether you have the English or the Aramaic, it doesn't matter. Okay. I want to actually just take a quick moment and go around and say names, because some of you are very familiar to me and some of you are new faces. And so if that's okay, just say your name. We'll do it really quick. I'm Karen Miller-Jackson. I'll tell you a little bit about myself in just one moment.
Ivy Resnick. I've been coming to hear Karen for a long time. I find her insights wonderful.
Okay, that's it. That was very nice, but no one's allowed to say anything. Thank you.
I live in Ramana.
Leave the feet.
Wow, welcome. Chile? You said Chile?
Turkey.
Oh, Turkey. Wow, yeah, cool.
From Venezuela.
Nice to meet you.
From South Africa.
We're hoping to bring you to Ranana more, so. Karen, what's your last name? That right, and I didn't hear. Danielle. Okay, I know your mom. Okay. I know Rebecca, and I made Aliyah the same year, so we have that deep connection, those people you make Aliyah with. And I know, we have these wonderful people on Zoom, so I just have to say we have with us, we have with us Yael from New Zealand, we have Helen, unfortunately people can't see you, but I see you, and Maya, and we have Cindy here, and I'm not sure I know the other ones, but hopefully after class they'll say hello. Okay, so we're going to jump in because usually we have an hour and 15 minutes. This year they've given us an hour, so we have to jump in. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, except not everyone here is going to see it. I apologize. Okay, and I'm going to turn my phone off. Okay. You know what?
The projector is on, it's just that the screen needs to come down.
Exactly, and I don't know how to do that. Susie, do you mind asking Tammy? Susie's gonna go, thank you. Just because there is something I wanna show you. Okay. Just turning off my phone, I apologize, I usually do this before I go. Okay. Okay, soon that will come up. We're going to jump into text and then I'll show you what I wanted to show you. What are we doing here? We're going to be studying Masechet Brachot from now until our winter break. Masechet Brachot is the first tractate of Talmud in Shas, in all of Talmud, and therefore it is a perfect starting place. And it also happens to be the basis for a tremendous amount of tefillah and things and mitzvot that we're required to do on a daily basis. Tefillah, brachot. We're going to talk more about Talmud during this year. We're going to talk more about skills during this year, and I'm going to give you, like I always do, those who know me, we're going to think more about the history, the backdrop, what's going on in the world in the time of the Talmud, and why this is such an essential text to learn. So for instance, thank you, Rebecca. You'll be pleased with what I have on my slideshow. What I'm going to show, see, look. I'm going to show them. So we're going to do some methodology, we're going to do some skill building, and I want to say one word, which is sometimes women say to me, not men, but sometimes women say to me, I prefer Tanakh. I'm happy, I love learning Tanakh. Now, I also love learning Tanakh. Tanakh is amazing. But they say, I don't need Talmud. And I kind of giggle inside because I think, well, Talmud is the basis of our Jewish life. And everything you do is based on the Talmud if you're a practicing Jew. And so for sure we should keep learning Tanakh, but I think if you haven't learned Talmud before, this is an amazing opportunity to expose yourself to really just what is the essence, the building blocks, the fundamentals of Jewish life. What I also want to do is I'm also doing Daf Yomi, and I think it's a wonderful thing that more women are doing that now, and everyone's doing it now, it's wonderful. The thing is, when you run through Daf Yomi, you don't always get some of the deeper analysis and beauty of the text. And so we are doing something very different here. We're going to be exploring the text in depth, doing smaller sections, and really finding the inspiration in that. What is this? This has nothing to do with, has something to do with Masechet Brachot. I wanted to invite you this Wednesday night. We have a very special event here at Matan. I am going to be a part of this tekes, this ceremony. You'll see a bunch of women's faces up there. The bottom four are 4 women who have finished here 6 years of halacha study and exams. We are getting official recognition as Meshivot Halacha. We've taken exams in Hilchot Nida, Hilchot Avelut, laws of mourning, family purity, Shabbat, Kashrut. And it's a very exciting evening, so if you want to join us, I would really love to have all of you there. Oh, no, not about me, just about the cause. But really, it's a special thing. Starts at 7. You can get the information from there. Okay. Now we're jumping in. Now, it's so interesting. When you think about Torah, and you think about the beginning of Torah, beginnings are so significant. Bereshit, right? You hear that word, and it has so many connotations for us. And how many times have you heard of our Torah about the first Rashi on the Torah, right? Why the Torah starts with Bereshit. Here too, I want to think for a moment about why the Talmud, why the Mishnah, okay? And we're going to talk about all these books as we go through the year, don't worry. Why the Mishnah begins the way it begins, why the first one begins the way it begins. Me'emata. And by the way, Mishnah and Talmud, it's a cycle like Torah. Torah, we restart every year. We just finished it and we restarted immediately. So too, when people go through Daf Yomi, when people go through Talmud, which takes a lot longer, they just restart again the next day with brachot. So me'ematai, brachot opens in source 1. Me'ematai korin et shema ba'aravin. From when do we read the Shema at night? So if you were the rabbis in the time of the Mishnah and before that, composing the oral Torah, right, deciding the order of the oral Torah, writing it down for the first time, how would you decide what is the most important thing to start with and what you put in? What would you have put? Would you have put this? From what time do we recite the Shema in the evening? No, right? I agree. What would you put? Okay.
A starting point. Reference.
Right? Right? Maybe you would have gone according to the mitzvot of the Torah, the first mitzvah of the Torah. Perhaps you would have talked about Pru or Vu, or if maybe that's one way to do it, which is how we have books called Sefer HaMitzvot, which go according to the mitzvot of the Torah. That is not how Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, the compiler of the Mishnah, decided to do things. What else might you have started with?
Modani.
Modani, beautiful. Good morning. Taidi's saying something very significant. Maybe we should start with the morning. Why do we start with the evening? You asked the first question that the Gemara asks. Very impressive.
That's considered the beginning of the day.
Well, we'll see. Yes, that's what we're going to see. And also, you might have started with faith, belief, okay? That it's a mitzvah to love Hashem. Why are we starting with this question? Me'ematai korin Shema baravin. From when do we read the Shema at night? And then listen what the Mishnah answers. Now remember, the Mishnah is compiled by Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, written down somewhere between 220 and 250 CE. We don't know exactly. Okay, when was the Beit HaMikdash destroyed? Those of you who've learned with me before know this. 70 CE. Okay, so we are in after that, or at least 130, 150 years after that. His answer is this: Misha'a she'hakohanim nichnasim la'achol b'trumatan. From the time which the priests would partake of their truma, which they were allowed to eat in the mikdash, the donations they were given. Okay, interesting answer. What would have been your answer from when you can say Shema at night? When can you start saying the nighttime Shema?
After sunset.
Great. Yeah, that would be very logical. Okay, so why are we bringing up the Kohanim and when they eat their truma here? We don't even have a mikdash anymore. And now the Gemara says, it gives us another piece of information which we didn't ask about. One thing you might want to ask is, well, if you have to start saying it, if you can start saying it from the time that the Kohanim eat their truma, when can you say it until, right? So the Mishnah asks this. It actually answers this without asking. It says you have until now. It's going to give us several opinions. Ad sof ha'ashmura harishona. One opinion. We don't have a rabbi's name here, but one opinion is that you can say Shema until the end of the first watch. Okay, just take that in for a moment. We'll talk about the watches in coming weeks. This actually does have a rabbi's name, Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, this is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Then we have another opinion. Turns out this is not the only opinion. So the first opinion is you can say Shema until the end of the first watch. Just as an aside, the night was broken into 3 watches, 3 time zones. And so if the night was 10 hours long, we'll make it easy. If the night was 9 hours long, each watch had 3. Okay, 3 hours. So you had 3 hours to say your Shema. Okay? Now take yourself back for a moment and think about the fact that this was before electricity. People's schedules were probably somewhat different from us, although I do know people who wake up at the crack of dawn. And they probably went to sleep much earlier, because the only way they had light in the evening is if they burned candles, and that was expensive, and you can imagine, right? Okay. Chachamim omrim ad chatzot. The rabbis say you have longer. You have until the middle of the night. Okay? You might be wondering why this is interesting, why this is significant. Okay, Rabban Gamliel omer ad shi'aleh amud hashachar. Rabban Gamliel says, you know what? You have all night long. What do you like? Which one of these opinions do you feel makes the most sense? Yeah, why? You're like a night owl. So it's interesting. We're going to see that the Mishnah itself addresses this question of, well, on the one hand, we want to give people opportunity to fulfill this mitzvah. On the other hand, we don't want to give them too much leeway that we cause them to fall asleep and forget. So the Mishnah continues. This is very unusual. The Mishnah is usually incredibly pithy, concise, short in what it tells us. And then usually we have in the Gemara a lot of elaboration and biblical verses that support the halacha. And we have stories, but this is a very unusual Mishnah. It tells us a story. Ma'aseh uba'u banav mibeit hamishtet. So it turns out there's a story related to Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel had a couple of teenage sons, and they were out late one night at the pub at a party, right? And they got back late. Amru lo karinu et shema. And they said to their father, Rabban Gamliel. You'll remember Rabban Gamliel from last year was not, a slouch. He was the Nasi. He was one of the greatest rabbis of the Mishnah. Okay, so his sons are coming back late, kind of, wobbling in, saying, oops, we didn't say Shema. Amar lahem, im lo ala amud hashachar, chayavim atem likrot. Says, if the dawn has not yet broken, you are required to say Shema. Okay, so why did the Mishnah tell us this story? How does it help us? Okay, gives us a timeline, and also it explains his opinion. Sorry. It explains his opinion of you can do it till the morning, right? It's backing him up. It's saying he really believed this. Here's a perfect example, okay? Okay, and then the Mishnah now elaborates more. V'lo zo bilvad amru, ela kol ma she'amru chachamim ad chatzot. Anyone know the great chocolate bar at Chatzot in the book? Any halacha, any mitzvah, which in theory you can do until Chatzot, which you're supposed to do by Chatzot, okay? Mitzvatan ad she'yaleh amud hashachar. Turns out there's other things, other mitzvot, which really you want to do by midnight, but if you don't do them by midnight, you actually have until dawn to do them. And so what's interesting here is an interesting question is we had three opinions, right? I'm going to show you a chart here. Okay, you see this chart? We have three opinions. We have the first opinion in the green is Rabbi Eliezer. His opinion is very clear. 3 ashmurot, okay? Ignore the 2A, 2B. 3 ashmurot, Rabbi Eliezer says you have that the first third of the night to say the Shema. Chachamim came and said, you have until the middle, chatzot, okay? You have until the middle of the night. Rabban Gamliel said you actually have until the morning. And it's an interesting question. Does Rabban Gamliel agree or disagree with the Chachamim, right? Because if you could say that he actually agrees with them, saying ideally you do want to say it by chatzot, but if you don't say it by chatzot, you have the opportunity to go on. All this time that I'm reading you this Mishnah, I hope you're thinking about my question, why is this the first Mishnah in Shas? Okay, so keep thinking about that as we go on. Okay, now it goes to tell us, by the by, okay, and this is very Talmudic, we always get a lot of associative thinking, so if you're an associative thinker, you're gonna like the Mishnah and Talmud a lot. Hekter halavim ve'evarim, the burning of fats and limbs, which they did in the Mikdash. Here we are again bringing back a mitzvah from the Beit HaMikdash. Mitzvatan ad she'yaleh amud hashachar. Okay, they too, they were burned in the night, and they too, the Kohanim had until the morning to finish. Okay, mitzvatan ad she'yaleh amud hashachar. Im ken, lama amru chachamim ad chatzot. If you actually have in the turquoise till the morning, and the chachamim actually agree with that, why did they say you should do it by chatzot until the middle of the night? Okay, and the Mishnah tells us a beautiful principle: kedei laharchik adam min ha'avera. We understand human nature. We want to avoid people setting themselves up for failure, right? So when you think about, I find this in the daytime. If I don't exercise first thing in the morning and I say, oh, I'll do it in a few hours, I'll do it in the afternoon, it doesn't happen. And I think Rabban Gamliel and the Chachamim had the same thought about Shema at night. You can say it anytime, and that's great if you're a night owl. But we don't want to set people up for failure. We understand human nature. Most people are going to fall asleep if they put it off and put it off and put it off. And so we want to consider that in our determining of the halacha. Okay, now I want to readdress my question. So before we jump into a little analysis of this, I want to jump into our question of why, once again, what comes to your mind? What's going through your head as you read this for why the rabbis thought this was a good thing to start with? And we're going to ask this question throughout class today.
Understand the motive self-Shema. Shema is the fundamental principle of our something else. The moment, you said Shema.
Exactly. So interestingly, I think that there's something very deep in what you're saying, but I'm going to also slightly argue with you, which is that for sure the Shema, if you're starting with anything, the Shema is a beautiful idea to start with. However, if you're going to start with the Shema, then maybe if you're starting, this is your starting point, then maybe say, how do we know we need to say the Shema? Or what is the, what is the point of Shema? Or how would you want to begin, right? To say from when, or what is the reason we say Shema at night, right? Okay, but that's not how the Mishnah works. And this is one of the things that I'm trying to show you, and you really pointed this out, is that the Mishnah is working on assumption that this is your practicing way of life, and they just jump right in. It's more of a legal book. The Gemara, the commentary on the Mishnah, is also legal, but fills in a lot more. It's more than legal. It fills it in with spirit and with biblical verses and history and meaning. But the Mishnah is the starting point for all of that. And remember, this was the oral Torah. So when the rabbis were writing down the Mishnah, they had a lot of what we'll see in the Gemara in their heads. They knew it. There were a lot of things that they knew. They just recited it all orally. But the time came to write down the Mishnah. We're told elsewhere that there was tremendous persecution. People were forgetting. They didn't have the freedom to sit and learn all day. And so the Mishnah needed to be written down to save the oral Torah. And so here we begin, Me'ematai Korim. Okay? Anyone else have any thoughts about why we began with this Mishnah? Why they began with this Mishnah?
I was thinking out loud. First of all, it just shows how important it is to say the Shema. It's connecting the Shema to the past, like to when we were in Israel and when we were, sort of like sets that intention. And, that it's so important to say that we can discuss when you can say, but it makes it super clear that it's something that you really need to say.
Okay, so you said something really amazing, and I want to take it a little further. You said it connects us to our past, connects us to Eretz Yisrael, but I want to sharpen that a little. You'll remember we talked about this a little bit in Elul. I think part of what's going on here, remember there were two mentions in our Mishnah of the Mikdash. The time from when you could start saying it, we said it would have been obvious to just say when it gets dark, when the stars come out, right? Seita Kochavim. However, the Mishnah says from the time the Kohanim entered to eat their truma. The Mishnah is deliberately, okay, now of course this Mishnah could be early, these could be early teachings from the time of the Mikdash, and the rabbis thought they were going to get their Mikdash back soon. Even so, I think they are working on the assumption that even if we don't get the Mikdash back, we want to preserve the memory. We want to preserve the memory, and the Mikdash was the place of closeness, of connection to God. And so built into the first Mishnah, they're not letting it go. They're not letting the Mikdash go. They're not letting the past go. They want to hold on to that. Okay, no problem. and so that comes up as well when we talk about the laws of the burning of the korbanot, the fats. Okay, so hold that thought. We're going to get to that in the Gemara. So we see here a number of things so far. We see that in the first Mishnah, okay, we start with the word me'ematai, from when, okay, and we are connecting to our past, okay, and we are connecting to the temple, and we're also allowing for different opinions. We have a three-way machloket. We're allowing for the people who are zrizim, who are like Rabbi Eliezer, who run to do it in the first third of the night. And we are also connecting to the people who are at the Beit HaMishpeh and need time. And the Mishnah reminds us, okay, the nighttime is a time where you might have all night to do this mitzvah, but it also is a time where you could slip up. And so, larchik min avera, let's distance ourselves from sin. Rebecca.
I wonder also if there's something that the Mishnah trying to establish the importance of time itself. Like, we're not any halachic question, but when you do something is of central importance, I guess, if they're putting it on the first Mishnah.
Amazing. Okay, I think you've tapped into our next piece, which is going to bring me to perfect segue into our next source, me'ematai. Me'ematai is a question of time. From when? And the Mishnah itself is making a choice to start with the night, right? As Riva pointed out, that's the Jewish day. But that's an assumption. We have to learn, we have to understand why that is. And we could have easily started with the morning, like Modani, but the Mishnah chooses to start with the night. And I think that that is an interesting and significant point. And so if you turn for a moment to your next source, we're just going to glance at two other, I excerpted 2 lines from 2 other Mishnahs, okay? There's, this is all from the first chapter of Mishnah Brachot, in source 2. Okay, source 2 is the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah parallels our Mishnah. Now remember, what's interesting is it was an oral Torah, so the words are often, there's often ways, clever ways for them to mnemonics and ways for the rabbis to have remembered the words of the Mishnayot. They didn't have it written out. So the first Mishnah is Me'e matai korin et shma ba'aravit. The second Mishnah exactly parallels that. Me'e matai korin et shma b'shacharit. From when can you say Shema and Shacharit? Now we're not going to dwell on this because we're going to learn it in a few weeks. But the answer is Mishayakir ben Tchevet Lavan. 2 opinions, okay? The first opinion, which is anonymous, is a person can, from the time you can distinguish between sky blue and white, which some people understand is on the talits, okay? Or Rabbi Eliezer says from when you can distinguish between sky blue and leaf green, which is harder to distinguish. And we'll get to this and understand why are they doing this. Okay, everything is interesting in this Masechet. But my point is that here too, in the morning, the rabbis are trying to figure out I think Rebecca's point is very significant, that they care a lot about time and how we use time and how the time in our day is best used. This is something which is very popular today. There's a million books, if you go onto Amazon, about your habits, your daily habits, how you take your time, how you make the most of your time, how do you manage to do everything and be everything all in one day. And I think that the rabbis also understood that people needed time as markers. They needed, it had this spiritual significance for them, the nighttime and the daytime. And this is something which we're going to see developed in the Gemara. So we're going to jump into the Gemara. I'm skipping over the next source. I'll actually, just to look at source 3. Source 3 is a Mishnah, the 4th Mishnah in Brachot. Interestingly here, it does, I'm going to bring it because the Gemara brings it. The Mishnah says, B'shachar mevarech shtayim lefanea v'achat la'achareya. You know that in the Shema, we have brachot, blessings that we say before the Shema and blessings we say after the Shema. If you look at your Sidur, you'll find them. In the morning, says the Mishnah, we say 2 blessings before and 1 after. Ba'erev shtayim lefanea u'shtayim la'achareya. What's unusual about the framing of this Mishnah, how it begins? Excellent. Considering everything we just talked about, we begin with the night. Why is this Mishnah starting with the morning? What's going on here? The rabbis are asking the same exact questions. So we're going to look now at the Gemara. We're jumping into the heavy stuff, and we're going to see some really beautiful ideas. Okay, source 4. These are the first words of Shas, okay? We have here, you see right behind me, we have, look at these, right? Many books, Gemaras, there's more of them probably behind the screen. The Gemara is vast. Why are these the first words of the Talmud, of the Gemara? Okay? Tana hecha kai de katani me'ematai. First of all, I think it's so interesting that the first statement of the Mishnah and the first statement of the Gemara are questions. Okay, in Judaism, that's a value. Question, right? Ask questions, ask good questions, always question. Okay, so the Gemara here says there's 2 questions. It's in the turquoise and in the yellow on my screen. The first question is, how does the Tana, which the Tana are the rabbis of the Mishnah, how does the Tana know to ask me'ematai? The Gemara is saying, the rabbis are looking at this Mishnah and saying, how did they decide? How did they decide this is, why are you starting here? Why aren't you starting with, it's a mitzvah to say Shema, okay? It's a mitzvah to have emunah and to say and to declare God's oneness, okay? That's not how they began. Why are they beginning with from when do you say Shema in Arabit? So that's their first question, meaning based on what is the rabbi of the Mishnah asking, from when do you say it? How does he know that? So the Gemara, this is what the Gemara does. It takes us back a few steps, okay? And the second question the Gemara asks, which is the question we all have been asking, the two, and also, my Shna Detani Ba'aravit Baresha. Why does the Mishnah start with Aravit, with the Erev, with the evening? Litnei Shacharit Baresha. It should have started with Shacharit. So the Gemara, the rabbis of the Gemara comes and they take no assumptions as a given and they question everything we just talked about. And so I hope you see that before we even got to the Gemara, we were kind of, pulling apart the Mishnah, but they themselves, everything I was bringing to you here is coming from the Gemara, from the rabbi's questions. So 2 questions. What are the 2 questions? 1, how do the rabbis know to ask? From when do you say Shema? How do we know we have to say Shema at night? Why are they asking from when do you say Shema at night? How do we know we have to say it? Second, why do they start with the evening? Why don't they start with Shema of the morning? Okay, 2 questions. So what's the answer? The answer to both questions is as follows. And here, I really think this is incredible. The Gemara says as follows. Tana Akra Kai, okay? The rabbi of the Mishnah is basing himself on the Kra. What's the Kra? The Mikra. The Torah, okay? The rabbis, they're speaking Mishnah, but they are deeply connected to the Torah shebichtav, okay? To the Torah. What did the Torah teach us? What's the basis of the understanding that you say Shema at night? What's the answer? Dichtiv b'shachbacha u'b'kumecha. What do we say in Shema every morning, right? I have the psukim here afterwards, right? V'dibarta bam b'shachbacha, right? Just pull it up and be exact. Sorry. Yep. Hang on. Okay. What is this pasuk teaching us? That the Shema should be around us all the time, hovering around us, okay? I command it to be on your hearts. You should be speaking them to your children. You should speak with them all day long, when you are returning home, when you're on the go, when you're laying down, and when you're waking up. Now, why is this pasuk the basis for our Gemara? B'shachbacha u'b'komecha, because what does that mean? Right, exactly. When first you lie down, says the pasuk, then you wake up. So that's how we know we start with laying down, with the nighttime. Okay, yafeh. But the Gemara is not satisfied, okay? Now they say, wait a second. So the other question is, why did the Mishnah not say from the time you go to sleep? Now remember, we go to sleep. I don't know, what time do you go to sleep? 2 minutes. I don't know if my mom's on Zoom. I know she goes to sleep a lot earlier than I do. But in olden times, in ancient times, they went to sleep pretty early because they had no lights and they woke up early, and their schedule was probably quite different than ours. But so we know that they were probably, the time you start saying it might be the time you're heading to shortly before you go to bed. However, the Mishnah didn't say from the time you go to bed. The Mishnah said from the time that the Kohanim go in to eat their truma. What's going on there? So, says the Gemara, V'hachi katani zman kriyat shma dikshkiva emat, okay? What is the time that you say the Shema lying down? What is that time? From when the Kohanim go in to take their truma. Misha'asha Kohanim nichnasim la'achol b'trumatan. So now the Mishnah, it's like, if you're a little mathematical, the Mishnah is making analogies here. It's saying, yes, the source of saying Shema at night is from when you lay down. And we also know that from when you lay down equals the time that the Kohanim went in to take their truma. Okay, and so all this fits together nicely. We're going to explore that a little more in a moment. The next thing the Gemara says is, however, the Gemara is not satisfied. It says, you might not want to learn from the pasuk, b'shachbacha u'b'komecha, from when you lay down and when you wake up. You might want to learn from another pasuk, which teaches us that the night comes before the day. And this pasuk we just read last week. What is that pasuk? Maybe you'd prefer to learn this halacha from the creation of the world, where it says, Vayi Erev, Vayi Boker, Yom Echad. It was night, it was day, and that was day one. Why? Why does the Gemara do this? Why isn't it enough just to say when you lay down at night and when you wake up? Why? It's complicated. Why complicate things?
I think to connect the idea, like how you go to sleep at night is how you wake up in the morning. You know, I think there's, I don't know, when the said people sleep like a light, wake up like a light. That idea of how, you know, I went to sleep last night and like I couldn't fall asleep, and then some guy was turning on his car, and I'm like, how am I gonna wake? Like, how am I gonna show up in the morning?
Well, we're glad you came. So I think that there's also something else. Does anyone else want to add to this? Why does the Gemara not satisfied with saying, or why does the Gemara want to offer us two options? To learn b'shach b'cha u'kamecha, when you go to sleep and when you wake up, and when God created the world, God created first night, then day. Moshe, sorry.
Did they do 3 Shabbat at that time?
Well, really, we're only talking about right now the Shema in, not the one when you actually go, not Kriyat Shema Lamita, we're talking about the one in Mariv and the one in Shachari. Yeah. They did do Kriyat Shema Lamita, but they're not counting that in this mitzvah of saying it b'shach b'cha and saying it b'kumecha.
It's like connecting Tanakh with the
Oh.
still
Okay, amazing. So you are like Rashi. Rashi says here, which is a good person to be like. Yeah, fair. So Rashi says, Akrakai, what is the pasuk that teaches us that what is the Tana basing himself on? Okay, he says, because in the end, the basis of the Mishnah is the Torah. The basis of the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral Torah, is the written Torah. And the written Torah tells us, okay? And so Rashi likes the idea of, that is why we're bringing both, right? Bringing both psukim to teach us that the basis of all of this oral Torah and halacha is really the written Torah, the Tanakh. But you need both, Oopsie, everything okay? However, I think there's something more going on here, okay? And so here's where I want to take you to this. B'shach b'cha kumecha, what's the context of this? The context of this is Sefer Devarim. The nation is already a nation. We're going into Israel. This is a mitzvah for Jews. This is very particular. The Shema is about for Jews. When you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you wake up, this is how you frame your day. Vayerev vayiboker yom echad is something else. Vayerev vayiboker yom echad is taking us to the place of when God created the world, of the universal, of everyone's day, of everyone's time. And I think the Gemara is struggling with this interesting notion that here in the beginning of Brachot, we're talking about us, the Jews, and what we have, but we believe that there's meaning for this, for the entire world, for all creations. And there's something more. If you look at source 7 for a moment, okay? Source 7, Rashi says something really interesting. On the pasuk, Vayerev vayiboker yom echad, Rashi brings the following midrash, okay? Yom echad, lefi seder lashon haparasha, haya lo lichtov yom rishon. You'll remember that all the other days of the week in the creation story, see, we're getting a little Parsha now too, right, are usually we do Rishon, Sheni, Shlishi, right? That's how we count. Why is the first day Yom Echad and not Yom Rishon, which is what we call our days of the week this year, or and today? So Rashi asks this, Lama Katuv Yom Echad. There are many answers given. One answer which Rashi brings is based on the Midrash, Lefi Shahaya HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yachid Ba'olamo, because God was one in his world. Shaloni v'ru melachim ad yom sheni. The angels were not created till day 2. Kach meforash b'Bereshit Rabbah. Okay? So what's going on here? Rashi's bringing a midrash. This is on the pasuk. He doesn't bring this on the Gemara. But the Gemara is bringing us Vayerev vayiboker yom echad to understand why we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, okay, at the night and in the morning. I think that the rabbis have all these sources in their head at their fingertips, and there's something about this idea. It's not enough to say when you go to bed and when you wake up. That's not a powerful enough source for them. They want something more. They want something which connects more deeply with the meaning and the essence of Shema, which is about recognizing God in our world. And I think that that's also significant. I want to say one other thing about the night and the day. The idea that we move from night to day rather than from day to night is a very Jewish idea, as we've all spoken about. All our Jewish holidays and Shabbat, we start with the night and go into the day. And I think there's something very powerful about that. Historically, the night, of course, can be associated with darkness, with crisis, with trouble, with suffering. And we're going to see this as a theme that runs through Masechet Brachot. This is true. I think this is in the back of the minds of the rabbis as they're writing these texts. They too are thinking, we've lost our center, we've lost our Korban. Of course, it's true that this is just the halacha. This is just how the Jewish day works. And that's a good enough answer. But there's more going on here. They are saying, we're starting with the night because we want you to know that after every darkness, there's going to be light. After every dark period, historically, right? And this is what Susie was saying, after everything difficult in our past, there's going to be light. And here I want to say something about our dear student Beppy, who some of you may know was a young child during the Shoah and survived the Shoah. She was a survivor. And I think she really lived her life based on this idea from what I've heard from her children, from what I've seen here. She came from a very dark place historically and came to the light. She was an incredibly active member of her Jewish community. Her life was not always easy. And yet every time she walked into this building or I saw her in shul, she had a smile on her face and she had a positive thing to say. And I think to have carried with her all of that all the difficult things, and to be able to embrace the day like that, I think this imagery of the night moving into the day and always carrying with you the past, but with so much hope for the future, is very much appropriate to connect with Beppy. And so when I was preparing this, it was just really just, I very much had this in mind. She'll be very much missed in our classes. It's hard to not have her sitting here today, and may her memory be for a blessing. And I know not all of you knew her, and so thank you for just allowing me to say those few words about her. So because Beppy was so dedicated to learning, we're going to continue now with our Gemara, okay? The Gemara, I'm not going to read this inside. The Gemara goes on to ask, why does this Gemara start with the night and then go to the day? If next we have a Mishnah, you remember the Mishnah said, why do we say two blessings before in the morning? And then it's in the Mishnah we saw earlier. I have to show it to you. Here, remember in Mishnah number 4, it said, B'shachar mevarach shayim. In the morning, we say 2 brachot before and 1 bracha after. In the evening, we say 2 brachot before Shema and 2 brachot after. So the Gemara itself asks, why, this is in the yellow, why does the other Mishnah start with Shacharit if we start with Arabi? Why is it mixing us up like this? And the answer the Gemara gives is just very technical, and it says, well, listen, this is what happened. The Mishnah started with Shema of Aravit, that's our first Mishnah, then went to Me'ematai Karin Shema b'Shacharit. So we went evening, morning. The next Mishnah does morning, evening. This is known as chiastic structure, for those of you who like to study Tanakh, meaning A, B, B, A. It went from night, morning, morning, evening. And I think there's also something, there's obviously a way to remember this oral Torah for the rabbis by doing it that way. And there's also something literary going on here, reminding us that each night, each day is a cycle and a constant opportunity for renewal. So that's just, the Gemara basically says, that's why it's not to say, still our Jewish day very much starts by Erev, by Boker, Yom Echad, B'Shach B'Chad, B'Kom Echad. Now we are going on to, are we recording? Okay. Now we're going on to say that this is what the Gemara asks next. What's the Gemara's next question? Amar Mar. So where are we now? Let me just get you focused in your source sheet. Okay, the bottom of page 4, okay? But if you prefer to look at the screen, you can look at the screen. Amar Mar, Misha'asha kohanim nichnasim l'chol b'trumatan. Okay, so what does it mean when the Mishnah says, now we're getting back to our question. Remember our question? Why does the Mishnah say the time which the Kohanim go to eat their truma? Why doesn't it say when the stars come out, when you go to sleep? Why do they have to bring up the Kohanim and the truma here? So this is what the Gemara answers. Nichtei Kohanim emat ka'ach truma misha'at seit ha'kochavim leitnei misha'at seit ha'kochavim. What time do the Kohanim go to eat their truma? Oh, surprise, from the time that the stars come out, seit ha'kochavim. So the Gemara, right, the Gemara likes to make things more complicated, but in the end, it helps us understand everything, okay? And so why couldn't the Mishnah have just said that we say Shema from the time the stars come out? Why not? Why mention the Kohanim, okay? So the Gemara goes on to give some answers, and it says, Milta. Let's just see, hang on. Oh, sorry, I told you it was, it's actually the top of 4. Anyway, the second paragraph on 4, Milta agav orche kamash malan, okay? The Kohanim was just teaching us this matter in passing, okay? So this is what the Gemara says. It's kind of a funny thing. The Gemara is saying, the Mishnah was speaking by the by. It's how they speak. It's how they associate the night with when the Kohanim came to eat their truma. And so they say from the emergence of the stars. The hakamash malan. Okay, I'm going to skip the next part. I think this is not insignificant. The Gemara is just giving us technical reasons for why the Mishnah used this language of the Kohanim came to eat their truma. But as I've said, I believe that what's really going on here is that the Gemara wants us to remember. The rabbis want, the Mishnah wants us to remember the Mikdash. And by saying from the time that the Kohanim came to eat their truma instead of tzeit hakochavim, so you see what's going on here? The Gemara is asking a technical question and gives a technical answer. But when I read this, I say, there's more here. There's something more here. They wanted more. They wanted us to remember the Kohanim. They wanted us to remember the mitzvah of truma and eating the truma. And so instead of using the easy language of tzeit hakochavim, we bring up the Kohanim because we want to remember our past and the Mikdash.
We're teaching an extra halakha that the time of the truma was the time of the tzeit hakochavim. So
Okay.
it's this,
Exactly.
ties in one extra piece of halakha.
Exactly. So that's exactly what they're saying here. Also, that they want to also teach us. It does that. It goes on like that. It gets a little complicated. So I don't want to complicate people since we're just starting. But exactly. And then the Gemara concludes. The Gemara finishes with this topic almost and says, once again, from the time that the Kohanim come in to eat their truma, okay, and this is the last paragraph, Uraminhu. Now, once again, we think we have a contradiction. Okay, now what's going on in the Gemara? The Gemara takes the Mishnah and then sometimes has statements that contradict the Mishnah. Okay, there's a whole other book called the Tosefta. Basically, all these other things, statements of rabbis that weren't included in the Mishnah. So they have a problem because they have this authoritative book called the Mishnah, and then sometimes they have all these statements of rabbis that contradict it. So that's exactly what's happening here. The Mishnah says, from the time the Kohanim came to eat the truma, but we have another rabbi who says, listen to this, from when me'ematai korin et shema ba'aravin, from when do you say shema at night? Misheha'ani nichnas lechol pito b'melach ad sha'a she'omed lipater mitoch seudato. Now we have a whole nother piece of information, okay? The rabbis, instead of talking about the Kohanim, could have said that the time we say Shema is from the time the poor person goes home from work, or not work, from the time the poor person sits down to eat his pita and dip it in salt, until the time the meal is over. Sorry. So what's going on here? Does this contradict what we saw? Listen carefully. The other statement, the alternative to the Kohanim eating truma, is that you can learn the time you say Shema from the poor person who goes in to eat his pita until he finishes his meal. Okay, so just to make sure this is clear, pretend you didn't know the Mishnah. From when do we read Shema at night? From the time the poor person sits down to eat his pita until he goes to sleep. How long is that?
I don't understand that. What does the poor person have to do with it?
Oh.
When does he eat?
Okay.
Why does he eat so late at night?
Well, he's eating dinner. Maybe he was out begging for money, working a little.
Oh,
Okay, he comes home to eat his dinner. It's nighttime. So that now you're making an interesting point. Is that the same time is that Seid HaKochavim? Is that when the Kohanim come to eat the truma? Is that the same thing? The rabbis have a problem. They have this other statement. And the question is, does it fit with our Mishnah or not fit with our
It looks
Mishnah?
like it's a lot shorter.
It is a lot shorter. And there aren't three opinions. Oh, you mean the time? Exactly.
The time
Exactly.
is a lot shorter.
Excellent. The time is much shorter. First of all, think about it. How much food is the poor person going to have for dinner? Right? It's saying he's dipping his bread in salt, okay? And so his dinner is going to be pretty quick. And he's maybe not even as long as the first watch of the night. So suddenly it seems like we have a statement which is saying you have to say Shema from the time the poor person comes in to eat his dinner, which is maybe the same time as the Kohanim eat the Truma, but you have until he's finished, which is really short span of time, like Gaby's saying. So suddenly we have a problem. And the Gemara says exactly what you say. Seifa vadai pliga amat nitin. It must be that the end time of the ani eating his dinner is having a machloket, is disagreeing with our Mishnah, because it sounds like it's much less time. But okay, we're going to put that aside for now. What about, is it the same time that the ani eats, that the kohanim eats? Okay, and then the Gemara concludes, and this is where we're going to finish with our Gemara for today. Lo ani v'kohen chad shigurahu. I think these words are very powerful. The ani, the poor person, and the kohen, they eat at the same time. It's an interesting point. Why are you smiling over there, both of you? What are you thinking?
Beautiful.
It's beautiful. Why is it beautiful?
In the light more vivid than the other.
Amazing.
We just finished singing the song about Cohen Gadol.
Uh-huh.
And how
Marie Cohen.
magnificent that was. When I'm in show and I hear it, it gives me chills.
Totally.
What people are just.
Can also be special people. What both of you just said, I can't even say it better. This is exactly what I think the Gemara is touching on. It's saying, listen, on the one hand, we want to preserve the memory of the Mikdash and the uniqueness and specialness of the Kohanim in our lives. And so when we think about Shema, we want to mention them right away. At the same time, we also care deeply. A core Jewish value is to think about the poor and the vulnerable and the weak in society. And so we're maybe going to measure when we measure Shema, want to think about the weak people, not about the elite special Kohanim. But the Gemara concludes, you know what? We want to think about both, right? We want to aspire for the spirituality of the Kohanim, and we want to also think about the Aniyim in our life. And I think that that's a really incredible way to close. And so if we have to review our themes for today of what we've studied, because I know that Gemara is a lot, and if you're not used to it, it's like a little bit overwhelming. So stick with me, I promise you it's worth it. And you're gonna be able to tell all your friends and children and that you're studying Gemara, studying Talmud. What are we seeing here? First of all, what we've learned is that the structure of the Jewish day moves from night to day or day to night, right? But that we have that rhythm in the Mishnayot, but we begin with the night. The night is the beginning, and it moves toward the day, and there's something symbolic there, okay? The next thing we see is that the oral Torah is, Torah Sheba'al Peh is our halacha, and at the same time, it's very much rooted in the Torah Shebichtav, and that's why Rashi says, Akrakai, right? The rabbi of the Mishnah is very much rooted in the Torah. Don't think he's not rooted in the Torah. But there's this deep connection between written and oral Torah. This is all just in the first paragraph of the first page of Gemara, okay? Our time is precious, and how we spend it is significant. And so when we think about measuring time, we want to think about how we how we distance ourselves from sin, how each morning is a new day, new hope. Being able to distinguish between the blue and the white, for us to be able to distinguish between the good and the bad, and make our days good, really maximize our potential. Echad, right? Yom Echad, Hashem Echad. The beginning of Brachot is reminding us to have Hashem in mind as we go about our day. Shema can have a message for the particular and the universal, okay? The idea of moving from night to day and having awareness of God in this world is something for Jews, but something that really has a universal element as well. Hashem echad, vayera vayboker yom echad. The Shema preserves the memory of the Mikdash, Misha'ah she'kohanim ochlin et trumatan, and also remembers the Ani, and the fact that we're going to see also other mentions of people going in and eating at night next week. The poor person and the Kohen are like one. I think that's a really beautiful statement. We didn't touch on the purifying theme. We'll talk about that next week. And I want to just end once again with this idea of from the darkness, we move from the darkness into the light. And even if we go back into the darkness, because each day has a cycle, this movement, the Gemara insists on beginning with the darkness, moving into the light. And I think that that's just something to carry with us. So I want to thank you all for joining us and for joining me. I'm going to give some time for questions here and on Zoom. And hi, Chana. Nice
Hi, I wanted to know, Karen, did you start at a different time today?
Oh, yeah, they changed the schedule. It's 10:15 to 11:15.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's why I came much too late.
It's recorded, so make sure you get the recording from the office.
And my source sheet is different from what you have on the...
Okay, so I'm going to tell them to be in touch with you, okay?
Okay.
I'll tell the office.
Yes, please.
Just
Thank
remind
you.
Linda, yes.
Is no mention of the Amidah. Did it only come later? Is the Shema more important than Amidah?
Okay, wow, so many important questions there. So 2 years ago, I gave a class on tefillah, and we talked about that, but we will talk about that again here. Interestingly, the first chapter of Brachot, actually I think the first 2 chapters of Brachot relate to Shema. Chapter 4 relates to the Amidah. And so it is very important, and those are, I would say, almost the twins, right? The biblical and rabbinic twins of tefillah. But you're right, they chose to start with Shema, and that's interesting. It's interesting. Any other questions, comments? So nice to have you all. I look forward to seeing you next week, and please sign up if you're ready to jump in. And I hope to see you Wednesday night as well.